All right. So I'm going to be sharing with you guys my journey and some of the things that the most important things that I've learned about entrepreneurship. And I'm really excited to deliver this message to you. So, little background. My parents are from the Dominican Republic, making me a first-generation born immigrant. And so I was born in New York City, but raised in Florida. So I grew up surfing and with long dreadlocks, if you can imagine. I was in a reggae band, and I did that whole thing. And that's when I discovered my first true love, which was jazz music. It was guitar. And I'm a super intense guy. Anything that I do, I go all in, 100%, do or die. So I spent 4 years of my life playing 8 hours a day, every day. I'm talking about, John, let's go out. And I'd say, no. And they'd say, but it's Friday night. And I said, I don't care, I'm practicing. So it was that intensity that I cultivated early. And eventually, once I graduated high school, I decided I was going to move to New York City to become the greatest jazz musician in the world. And so I hit up my brother. I was like, hey, you want to bounce with me? And he was like, let's go. So we took the bus up, La Cubana, all the way to New York City, where my entrepreneurial career got started. And I was working a bunch of dead-end jobs. I remember the first day I touched down, I had an interview to be a knife salesman. And then I did leather salesman, and I was a bag boy at a dry cleaner. I was just doing anything and everything that I could to help make ends meet. And it was in this kind of bouncing around that I got a gig as a doorman, which, all right, it's pretty cool. 18 years old, was making 14 bucks an hour. I was like, all right, I could do this. And here's where I learned the most important lesson of my life. And I often say that opening up doors for people opened up doors for me. My pops, and it's important for me to say, and I haven't opened up about this until recently, but my parents immigrated here illegally, or to the States. And it made growing up really awkward, because it's something that you're not allowed to talk about. My parents had to live in the shadows, and they worked really crummy jobs. My mom was a custodian, and my dad was a presser at a dry cleaner. And I remember one time I came to the dry cleaner, and my dad brought me to the back. It's pretty much a sweatshop. And he was pressing a blazer. And it looked really nice from the outside, and he opened up the lining, and he said, John, you see this? And on the inside of the lining, it was wrinkled. And he told me, I know that this is here. If I deliver it to the customer, he won't know. But I'm going to smooth it out and steam it away, because whatever you do, do it well. He told me, the way you do anything is the way you do everything. Bing, light bulb. So I became the best damn doorman you could find. Right? If I was going to do that, I was going to do it well. And so I learned your name, your kids' names, your pets' names. When I would see you coming around the corner, no one had to tell me anything. I would grab the dry clean, the packages, and I would be right there. And that started kind of developing genuine relationships with these residents. And I was working on Wall Street, some of the world's, literally the world's wealthiest people. But money never felt attainable. I grew up poor, and everyone there was old white money. And I was like, I don't know. And so I got an offer to do the same thing, doormanning, but in a little town called Brooklyn in New York City. And that is really where things started to change. Because here I was, around people, also millionaires, but they were young, they looked like me, they were creative. Some of them were professional rock climbers, rock climb for Red Bull. There was a guy who was a professional dating coach. There was filmmakers, entrepreneurs, and I learned a super important lesson, and that is you can make a really good living, a damn good living at that, and you don't have to compromise what you love at all. All that I had known up until that point was a lie. And so I was here for a year developing relationships, and there was one resident in particular that I got really close with, and his story is nuts. I can go on about him for days. He spent 18 years in prison, sentenced at 19, out at 37. By the time I met him at 44, he was already a millionaire. And he was not shy about his money. He drove a BMW M5, he had the fitted, he had a $100,000 watch on his wrist. And he approached me one day because I worked an overnight shift. So I'd work from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. and then afterwards I would go to school. And he said, John, what do you do with your time? I said, I don't know, Facebook, try to get at girls, like whatever I can do. And he taught me that a man is defined by what he does with his time. You see, money comes and goes, all types of resources come and go, but time is the one thing that you don't get any more of. Time is the one. So he slipped a little project on the desk and he said, I want you to do this ad. It was like a Craigslist ad. I was like, all right. So I did it. I spent all night working on it. He was the first one up. Last one down, first one up every night, no exception. Got up real early and I was excited to give him the project. He looked at it and said, all right, it's pretty cool. And so we started developing this rapport. And then came my first business opportunity. He said, John, you seem like a smart kid. I'm going to give you access to my dry cleaning facility. So I'll give you wholesale rates without wholesale volume. So this shirt that I'm wearing right now would cost $4.50 to get dry cleaned. It would cost you that. It would cost me, because of my relationship with Hugo, 50 cents. So I was like, all right, it seems like a pretty good business. Let me get started. So it's funny because I call my first business an on-demand laundry tech startup. That's way fancier than how it actually started. It started with me in a cheap suit, the same suit that I doormanned in, cheap business cards, cheap flyers, and I would go up to a town that I fell in love with called Harlem, and I would go up to the doorman there and I would say, hey, my name is John Henry, how are you? I'm a doorman too, and I know that you're the key to the building. And they'd look at me as 18 years old and say, well, what does this guy know? But I started coming around every day, every day, every day. And I'd get him a coffee. Hey, how do you like your coffee, light and sweet? Every day I'd show up with a coffee. And what did that cost me? $1? But what'd that do? Start building this relationship. And so just the way Hugo won me over, I started winning over these doormen. I started gaining customers. I was like, all right, cool. I'm starting to make some money and so on. And I was waiting till December 25th, Christmas Day. I was the building's favorite doorman. I was going to make $4,000 to $6,000. I was going to quit December 31st, and then I was going to have a few months worth of runway, and I was going to go at this full time. Turns out, entrepreneurs don't make good employees, right? Because we're always trying to innovate and stuff within the workplace. I was always trying to, like, hey, what if we do this instead? And it was not well received. And on December 1st, I got fired. So I often say, like, I was going to take the leap of faith, but I got kicked off the ledge. And now, a couple of months prior to this happening, I told one of the residents, I was like, hey, man, I'm gonna leave. He said, well, what are you gonna do? I said, I'm gonna start a dry cleaner. He said, you gonna start a what? I said, I'm gonna start a dry cleaner. Why? He said, dude, I've been working in the film and the TV industry for the past 25 years. And we have yet to find a single dry cleaner that can meet our crazy demands. He said, what time do you get off? By this time, I had been promoted to the afternoon shift. So I said, I got off at 11. 11, I told him. 11:05. Whoop, he was right there. He picked me up and took me on to the scene of what became my first movie, which is a movie called The Wolf of Wall Street. So that same night, I met Leonardo DiCaprio. I met Martin Scorsese. But more importantly, I met the wardrobe supervisor, who was the guy in charge of all the clothes. And he asked me a ton of questions, and I had no idea what I was talking about. But at the end, I finally came clean and said, dude, I don't know, but I promise you I'm going to work super hard. Okay, months pass. My boys are ragging on me because I had been bragging about it. They're like, oh, where's Leo now? Because it had been months and they didn't call. And the very next day after I got fired, Wolf of Wall Street called. Hey, you still ready to do those clothes? I said, absolutely. I went. Now, mind you, when I started, I was lugging sacks of laundry through the subway. I don't know if any of you guys have been through the NYC subway system, but it is not pretty. It's not a pretty thing. A lot of people, sweaty, it smells. I was lugging sacks of laundry heavier than me through the train from Harlem all the way down the A line to 4th T Street and then over to Brooklyn, smelling ridiculous. People were looking at me like, what the hell are you doing? By this point, I had quit school, which is the scariest thing I ever did. I dropped out of college, And my parents are immigrants, so I was supposed to be a college graduate. And there were so many times when I doubted myself, but something inside felt right. Something inside felt right. Now, most people think that seeing is believing, but that's a skeptical attitude, because then you're limited to what you can touch, to your senses, to your 5 senses, but we have higher faculties. And so I believe that believing is seeing. The best entrepreneurs understand that believing is seeing. You must be able to close your eyes and visualize. It has to come true first in your mind. And you have to believe it so strongly that it's just emanating off of you. It's just emanating. And then what happens is physical reality begins catching up. And so I was in this stage, I was beginning to discover this. And so I was hustling, and then after I did Wolf of Wall Street, the guy said, hey, you did a great job. There's a new account in town. If you do this, or he goes, if you get them, you're going to be okay for a long time. I'll make the introduction. I said, okay. Makes the introduction. I go, it's a show called Boardwalk Empire. Snagged it. Another show, Law and Order. Snagged it. Person of Interest, White Collar, Amazing Spider-Man 2, Ninja Turtles, Unforgettables, Americans, Hostages, Jay-Z, Beyonce, Will Smith, Mike Tyson, Spike Lee. I dominated 90%. Thank you. 90% of the film and the TV industry. And then I discovered, okay, I'm an entrepreneur. This is what you call this. So we've been hearing a lot of talk about product market fit and accelerators, and I run one, so I'm allowed to make fun of them, and all this stuff, but that comes secondary to hustle. You gotta want it so bad first, and then all that stuff becomes revealed to you. Then all that stuff becomes revealed to you. And then I started educating. Okay, I'm an entrepreneur. Cool. Brand matters. I brought in a creative director. Okay, cool. Customer service. Boom, brought in some customer service reps. Maybe I should do housekeeping, because when I was a doorman, that's something that people asked me for as well. Rolled out housekeeping, rolled out dog walking. Then I had a little thing going. I had 13 employees. I was 20 years old. I was like, okay, this is kind of cool. It was scary. I learned real quick. If I get shit-faced the night before, wake up late, miss a meeting, drop an account, I can't pay my employee that week. Things got real fast. And so when you're an entrepreneur, life is it's not normal for you. It's not normal. One of my favorite quotes is from Spider-Man. Uncle Ben told Peter Parker, he said, with great power comes great responsibility, and that's so true. So I started bearing the weight of the world on my shoulders, and I was the best leader that I could be every day. And so probably the last good move that I made was, Aisha, would you raise your hand? That was my prior CTO of my first company. I met him, and I realized that technology was the way. Now, we started working together. We met at a coffee shop. He was a shy guy at first, and we started doing some projects here and there. And then eventually, he became full-time CTO. He developed some software, and that's when we really started taking off. But mind you, the software came a year and a half after the business. The business. One of the speakers yesterday said something so plain and simple, I thought it was beautiful. I think his name's John O'Connor. He was like, entrepreneurs make money. And that's so true. Business. App comes later. App doesn't matter if you're not in business. So a year and a half later, this app comes around. We're growing 12, 15% month to month to month. And then eventually, we had multiple vendors at this point, and one of the vendors that we had dealt with was acquired. And this guy who acquired the vendor was looking at the growth charts, and he's like, whoa, who's this company? And he sat me down, and we had coffee at 7 a.m. I often say, like, real business gets done early in the morning. 7 a.m., first thing. And he asked me, he told me, John, are you interested in selling the company? I said, no. He said, would you sell? I said, no. And I kind of shrugged him off, and then later that day I was at work, and I was like, yo, some guy tried to buy the company, and they're like, what? Tell me you said yes. And I was like, shit, should I? And so we prepared a presentation. We're like, all right, let's see how much we can get for this thing. So we prepared a presentation, and then I called a bunch of people I knew that had money. And we lined them up day after day after day after day. And every day, I remember the first day that we pitched, Aisha won't let me lie, I stumbled, I was tripping on my words, and the app actually broke down in the middle of it, and I tried to scurry and like change the slide real quick, and it was terribly embarrassing. But we had 24 hours to make it better. So by Tuesday, a little bit better. Wednesday, next guy, a little bit better. Thursday, and then by Friday, we left the originally interested buyer at the end. And he got the most refined pitch and the most refined product. And the company that I'm working on now we're running an accelerator. The first meeting that we ever had for this company, we decided we had this thing that was brewing. And so we went to a bar, and we were having drinks. And we were just chilling, whatever, getting ready to talk about this thing, and I get a text, and I just look casually at my phone, and I just stopped. And I started tearing up. And Aisha and Evan, they looked at me like, dude, are you okay? I was like, dude, I gotta go. And I went to the bathroom really quickly. And it still gets me emotional. I started crying. And what was flashing before my eyes was all those times that I was lugging the sacks of laundry to and from the train, all those times where I didn't know what the hell I was gonna do to cover payroll, the highs, the lows, all this crazy journey. And I walked out of the bathroom, and I was like, we just sold the company! And they were like, oh, shit! And then we got the announcement that the guy had decided to meet us at asking price. And so that was kind of how it went with the acquisition of the first company. And the best feeling I've ever had in my entire life was going to my mom and my dad's house. We were in a little fight at the time. And I sat down. I said, Mom, please sit. Sat. They're like, what? They were expecting an apology. And I took out my checkbook, and I wrote him a check. I said, that's for you. And my mom was like, what is this? I didn't tell them that I was in the middle of selling the company because deals fall through all the time. And I just didn't want that pressure on my back. Only I knew in a small circle. And then that's when I let them know we sold, and they were jumping up and down for joy. And that's the reason that I did everything that I did. It was for my parents. That's the reason. That's the drive. That's the drive. And so now, one of the key takeaways that I want you guys to have from this is I think that you shouldn't listen to people nearly as much as people say you should. I strongly believe, and that's not to be confused with don't seek counsel. Seek counsel. Get some good advice, get some good mentorship. But at the end of the day, when you go to sleep and you close your eyes, it's just you and you. It's just the I and the I, it's just you and the self. You have to live with the own decisions that you've made. You guys are in this room right now because of the decisions that you've made, despite what anyone else has advised you. So if there's any takeaway, please learn to trust yourself, develop that intuition. We know the answer. We know it's in here. And yeah, you can make mistakes, but you keep stumbling and so on. You keep developing yourself as an entrepreneur. And so our idea of a good time, my buddies and I, was kind of getting up on the whiteboard and drawing out problems and then trying to crack them, some real entrepreneur stuff. And we thought, wow, it'd be cool if we can bring this to Harlem as a whole, this village that we fell in love with. And so I knew that the acquisition was underway and I was going to have a lot of time, and I'm really intense, so it wasn't enough for it to be a casual thing. And so our current project now, we seek early stage companies. We give them resources. We give them world-class mentorship. So we're really happy to be supported by guys like Google and New York Times and MSNBC and so on. And we give them free office space for 9 months. And the big screw you is that we take zero equity. And the one thing that we ask is that you headquarter back in Harlem. So the way that the companies pay us is to stay right here in this little village. And so that's the project that I'm working on now. And I'm super excited to announce that one of our portfolio companies from back home presented earlier today, Croissant. Shout out to those guys. A round of applause for them. So it's been a great bonding experience to have them here. And so this has been my journey thus far, and now I'm looking to the future to see what it is that I can create. But the most important thing that you guys can leave with today is to just let it sit with you, let it marinate in you, that all the fancy schmancy stuff comes before relentless desire. If you have a shitty product market fit, if you don't have a good team, if you don't know the right people, that stuff will be revealed to you after you develop this fire. It's about the guy who wakes up first thing in the morning, won't stop, can't stop, eats, sleeps, breathes, everything, his project, his idea. It must come to life. It must come to life. And once you have this, things are just revealed to you. I like to use Croissant as a great example. They started with an idea. It was an HR benefits platform. And boy, they just couldn't strike the goal with that one. But they kept at it, and they kept at it, and they kept at it, and they persevered, and they twisted, and they turned, and then they found this thing, and they started charging cafes, and they kept going, and eventually they landed at the product where they're at now, and they're doing really, really well. So I'm excited for them. And that is what I think makes a great entrepreneur. And remember, seeing is believing is a skeptical attitude. Believing is seeing. Thank you.